So you're past the Spanish basics. You can order at a restaurant, ask for directions, introduce yourself. You can even hold casual conversations, talk about your daily routine, or share a bit about your past or opinions. But now what? You're not a beginner anymore, and that's exactly when things can get a little confusing. At this stage, the goals are no longer about survival Spanish or expanding on sentence templates. Instead, you start to realize, yes, I can say a lot of things, but they may not always sound natural. It might be hard for you to find the right words on the spot. So your sentences work, but they just don't flow. And because you're no longer in that beginner phase, learning things in rather a linear way, just to cover the basics, setting a goal for yourself can feel really challenging. Like, what exactly should I work on now? That's exactly what one of our students, Lynn, in our program Elevate Spanish Accelerator, said when she reached this point.
Sometimes as you get along, it becomes less clear what kind of goals you need to set for yourself. And so having someone to help you with that is really beneficial too.
And it's true, at the intermediate level, goals can seem blurrier, but that does not mean they should disappear. In fact, this is when setting clear goals becomes more important than ever. Lynn was able to break through and keep growing, keep advancing. She continues to do so to this day. We'll hear more from her a bit later in this video. But what I want to walk you through are 4 tips to help you set clear, practical goals as an intermediate or advanced learner of Spanish. These will help you move forward and keep your motivation high along the way. And if you're at that stage now where you know a lot of Spanish, you can understand a lot of Spanish, but the speaking just does not feel natural yet, or you're not sure what to work on next, I created a free guide just for you, which is the perfect companion to this video. It's called Stop Hesitating, Start Speaking. And it will walk you through exactly how to develop true fluency using the Spanish that you know. Because it's not always about learning more, it's about knowing what to do with what you have. You can find that at the link below or by going to ericaraylanguage.com/start. Let's talk about how to set specific, actionable goals as an intermediate or advanced learner. After having worked with hundreds of Spanish learners at every single level imaginable, I've been able to identify the unique challenges faced at this level. I remember being in this exact same place, so many of the strategies that I'm going to share are based not only on my students' experiences, but on mine as well. In fact, I continue to use some of them to this day to continue advancing with my own Spanish. Tip number 1 is to focus on improving your skill and comfort level with the language, not just covering more topics. At this stage, it's not always about whether or not you can talk about something, but how clearly, comfortably, and naturally you can do so. So think about context you encounter regularly. These don't need to be complicated. It could be talking to your in-laws, participating in a group conversation at work, telling a story about your childhood, or retelling something funny that happened yesterday. You probably can do those things to a certain degree, but how comfortable does it feel? Do you pause a lot, struggle to find the right words, use the same 2 verbs over and over again? Well, that's where your next goal can come from. One of Lynn's goals in Elevate was to speak more naturally.
Sí, uno siempre necesita metas. Porque si no tiene metas es como un barco a la deriva, ¿verdad? ¿Hacia dónde te diriges? Pero quizás las metas que ahora te propongas no sean tan específicas como las de un principiante. Una meta que hablábamos en la clase pasada era esta: hablar con naturalidad.
But the key with these broader goals is to find a way to measure them. So if you want to sound more natural, but that goal sounds a little vague, here's an example of how you can make it measurable. You can say, I'll record myself talking about, insert specific topic, once a week and track how natural and fluid I sound, looking at things like clarity, speed, and how easily the words come to me. In that way, you're able to clearly see your progress as you progress toward this broader goal of sounding more natural. And sounding more natural is just one example of how you can work on a skill. You can also focus on other skills, such as improving your transitions between topics, expanding your vocabulary in a topic that you already know, using more verb variety or past tenses, avoiding filler words or pauses, or even substituting your English filler words with Spanish ones. Maybe replacing and with and este All of that will help you sound more natural when you're speaking Spanish. And the list goes on and on. We specialize in helping our students select and implement goals such as these. And remember, it's not always about learning more. Most intermediate learners are sitting on a gold mine of Spanish they already know, but they're not sure how to unlock it. So here's what I recommend. Take a step back and look at what you can already do. Then choose just one area to push into active use. Maybe you already know lots of vocabulary related to family or work, but you just don't use them a lot. And so when the opportunity arises, you find yourself fumbling and trying to find the words. Having more conversations about those topics is a perfect place to start. The free guide that I mentioned, Stop Hesitating, Start Speaking, walks you through how to turn that passive knowledge into real-world speaking confidence. Tip number 2 is to challenge yourself with more advanced topics using what I call the FORM method, F-O-R-M. So you've identified everyday context where you want to improve your fluency, but you also want to stretch yourself with richer topics and deeper conversations. This is where my FORM method comes in, a framework that we use with our private students in Elevate. It helps our students set strong, personalized goals that lead to real results. Here's how you can use it when your goal is to challenge yourself with more advanced topics. The F stands for functional. So what do I want to be able to do on a practical level? So ask yourself, what kinds of conversations do I want to have, or what monologues do I want to present that push me outside of my comfort zone? It could be, for example, explaining your viewpoint in a debate, navigating a doctor's appointment, or sharing a personal experience with detail and emotion more than you normally would include. The O stands for outcome, and this is extremely important, and it's what most people miss. What will success look like? This is huge because without a defined outcome, your brain won't register the progress you've made. Even if you're improving, you won't feel it, you won't know it. So if your functional goal is navigating a doctor's appointment in Spanish, the outcome can be, I'll know I've succeeded when I can attend a doctor's appointment, explain 2 to 3 of my symptoms clearly in Spanish without switching to English, and ask at least one follow-up question about what he said, about my treatment, medication prescribed, etc. These are outcomes. This is how you'll know you succeeded with your functional goal. It's very important to establish clear outcomes. Now, the R stands for routes or routes, however you like to say it. So what is going to get me from the functional goal to the outcome? What am I doing to practice? And here you have an opportunity to use all of the foundational elements of language learning: listening, reading, writing, speaking. On the input side, you could listen to short patient-doctor dialogues on YouTube. And maybe it's time to review some key vocabulary about anatomy or symptoms that you've learned before, but now they're relevant. Now you can choose from that massive list of medical vocabulary exactly what you need to describe your symptoms to the doctor. If you're planning on asking the doctor a question about a specific condition that maybe you know you have, maybe you want to just read an article about that completely in Spanish, which will automatically have you reviewing certain words that you may need during that session. And of course, speaking, practice your mini monologues out loud. See where you're getting stuck. Make a note of those areas that just didn't come out as smoothly as you would have liked. Role play with a tutor or a language partner or a doctor friend if you have one. Make sure you have an opportunity to get feedback. These are just examples of the routes that you can take to go from goal, your functional goal, to the actual outcome. Every time the routes can look very different, just depending on what your goal is, what you enjoy doing, and your actual level. And then finally, the M in our FORM acronym stands for mechanical. What grammar do I need to focus on to fulfill this goal? And of course, have that expand into all other aspects of my speaking. You can take advantage of the situation to review grammar structures that you'll need. For example, me duelen las piernas. In English, we certainly don't say, to me, they hurt the legs. So you want to make sure that you are familiar and comfortable with how you're going to describe things like that using the natural Spanish grammatical patterns. Maybe you need to relate a story and you realize that you need a stronger command of preterite versus imperfect verbs or better use of pronouns. You don't need to master everything. You don't even need to master every verb tense that you need to fulfill your goal, because it doesn't have to be perfect. but you do want to choose 1 or maybe 2 focuses at a time to go a little bit deeper on that grammar and give yourself more opportunities to practice that grammar than maybe you have on an everyday basis. Tip number 3, take a top-down approach. When you're just starting out, it's super helpful to script out things that you want to say. For example, I want to learn how to introduce myself. I want to learn how to order a coffee. You or someone can help you script out pretty much exactly what you need to say. And then you can practice with that exact dialogue, making changes where needed, learning your first bit of vocabulary. But once you're intermediate or beyond, your brain has already absorbed a lot of Spanish. So you can start with what you already know. So instead of scripting out a conversation in advance, a great way to identify what grammar areas are lacking for you is to speak and then get feedback on where you're lacking. What words were missing? What sounded unnatural? Where did you substitute another word in the place of one because you couldn't find really the words that you needed to precisely express your thoughts? And that becomes your learning plan. You have identified gaps. I personally love to do this. I'll take a topic that I'm just not versed in at all and just do my best talking about it. And then figure out, what are all of those words that I've been missing? What are the words that I need to really be able to express what I wanted to say? This is why in Elevate Spanish Accelerator, we do a conversational language evaluation for our students before we design their program. Not a useless multiple choice placement test that really just tells you how well you can read and select options from a list. Does nothing to help us know how you speak. And then we design a full roadmap for our students based on this form method. So what about you? Taking that top-down approach, what can you challenge yourself to speak about and then rewind and find the gaps? It's a great activity as an intermediate to advanced learner. And tip number 4 is to hone in on one grammar point at a time. Now, we touched on this when we talked about form because the M stands for mechanical, and that's the grammar. But you can also use this when you're starting not with a functional goal, but when you're kind of doing it in reverse and starting with a mechanical goal in mind. One of the biggest mistakes I see intermediate and advanced learners make is trying to fix everything at once. You may listen to yourself speak and say, oh, I need to work on verb tenses and prepositions and pronouns and word order, and everything just seems a bit off. So what happens? You start looking everything up and trying to tackle everything at once, and your brain just short circuits. But at this stage, the key is not more grammar, it's targeted grammar. You're going to make way more progress for the long term if you choose one focus at a time, maximum 2, and work with it deeply across different skills. We never want to work on the grammar in isolation. It doesn't work very well. Let's say you notice that you're constantly hesitating when using the past tense, especially when trying to decide between pretérito and imperfecto. So if that's your goal of the moment, you don't need to stop everything else you're doing and just focus on grammar. It's just that this becomes your filter. When you have that focus, so now when you're listening to native speakers, you start noticing how they use those tenses. When you're writing and speaking, you make intentional choices to pay attention to that point in particular and try to self-correct. And then what you can't self-correct, you get feedback on. And you make more room for repetition. You may make yourself tell more stories in the past, talk more about what you did yesterday, because fluency comes from exposure plus conscious awareness and use. That was Lynn's experience.
Like I see, for example, if I'm looking at synonyms or prepositions, or where before it was more to understand the language, get more of the just vocabulary down and sentence, just let me be able to say something, where now I can see I'm kind of refining it a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, I still am not quite understanding this very well. Let me put a little more effort into seeing about that.
That's how grammar sticks at this level, not by memorizing every rule, but by intentionally choosing a focus and repeating it in context until it becomes second nature. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed by grammar, take a breath, pick a structure, and let that be your focus for the next week or month or however long you choose to work on it. And getting specific doesn't mean getting complicated. It just means getting focused. That's what Lynn experienced as well. Ultimately, what you might be missing as an intermediate advanced learner is support and guidance to help you clarify your goals. Someone to give you a plan and the accountability to actually follow through.
The thing that Elevate allows you to do is kind of explore for yourself where you you find strengths or weaknesses within your own development in your Spanish speaking, whatever your goal might be. And I think that it allows you to do that and at the same time be focusing on what is going to be an area that you find most practical in your life too, whether it's, if you want to use it for a medical purpose or for a vacation purpose, whatever that case may be. So it's designed that way to be very individualized, and I think that's very helpful. Your instructor sees, oh yeah, you need a little more work here, where if I was doing it completely on my own, I might build a totally different structure for myself, and I might not get anywhere. So I really feel like Elevate has helped me to kind of do that and even see that for myself.
Oftentimes, it is so much easier for someone on the outside to spot what you need next and guide you to get you there, especially when you're too close to be able to see it yourself. That's the way that we like to support our clients. So let's bring it all together. Intermediate goals can feel like they get really blurry, but they're essential at this stage. And the key isn't in setting perfect goals. The ultimate goal is simply defining what progress looks like for you right now. Here's a quick recap of the 4 tips we covered. Number 1, shift your focus from topics to skills. It's not always about what you can talk about. It's about how naturally, clearly, and confidently you can do so. Number 2, use the form method to create clear, personalized goals. Define the type of conversation you want to have. Functional, what success looks like, that's your outcome, how you'll practice, those are your routes, and what grammar will support it. Those are your mechanics. Number 3, take a top-down approach. Don't wait for the perfect script. Start with what you can say it, and then refine it from there. Number 4, hone in on one grammar point at a time. Go deep, not wide at this stage. Fluency comes from focused repetition, not trying to fix everything at once. If you need help focusing on one thing at a time so that you can actually follow through and see your results, your first step is to download my free guide, Stop Hesitating, Start Speaking. I'm going to walk you through how to set a speaking goal that's actually meaningful, tailor your learning to what you need next, and then activate it with a 5-step method so that you can stop second guessing yourself all the time and speak with more confidence and more fluidity. You can grab it for free at the link in the description or by going to ericarealanguage.com/start. And if you're an intermediate learner going at it alone, feeling like you're grinding but struggling to stay consistent, it might be because you're missing one simple but powerful element in your routine. I talk all about it in this video. Go check it out.